So as I mentioned, there were two topics that were never covered in any marketing class I ever had. And then when I get to work, I found out it was a huge amount of what I had to do. So the second topic here is budgeting and forecasting. So here's our verse for the day, Proverbs 6:6. Go to the ant, thou sluggard, consider her ways, and be wise, which having no guide, overseer, or ruler, provides her meat in the summer, and gathers food for the harvest. How long will you sleep, O sluggard? When will you arise out of your sleep? You had a little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to sleep. So shall thy poverty come on thee as one that travails, and your want is an armed man. Winter is coming in every area of life. Always prepare. So, in business,
Dr. Forrest, dial 1-800.
always have to know where you can get it.
Dr. Flagg, you have a visitor in the main lobby.
Andy's back. So, forecasting. There are two different types that we do. We do qualitative forecasting and we do quantitative forecasting. Qualitative is, of course, subjective, and quantitative is numerical. So let's first look at qualitative forecasting techniques. These are subjective techniques for forecasting. The first one is the jury of executive opinion. Here, we go gather a bunch of experts and we ask them what's going to happen. Now, I personally have found that generally I found an expert, when they guess, are generally right within 10% plus or minus. So for example, one day Marvin asked me, Joe, how much water weight do we lose when we roast our coffee? I don't know. So I did what you would do. There's statistical methods to find that out, right? So I weighed for 6 weeks. I weighed the coffee before we roasted, and then we weighed the coffee after we roasted. And then we did it for all the different roasts for 6 weeks to figure it out. Then I ran the calculations and I walked into Marvin's office and said, Marvin, I found out how much water weight loss we have. And he said 16%. I said, if you knew, why did I do all this work for the last 6 weeks? And he said, oh, I didn't know. I was just guessing. What is it? And so I said, well, just so that you'll know, it's 16.3% loss of water. Right? He's an expert. He could guess after 40 years of experience. He just kind of knew what's going on. The Delphi technique. So in the Delphi technique, we take experts like the jury of executive opinion, and we ask them to tell us what's going to happen. And then, but we've got a bunch of people. So let's say we have 10 people. So we take all their answers and scatter them and put them on a piece of paper. Then we hand them back to the experts and say, so here are 100 things that could happen. Of these, what are the most likely? Rank them from 1 to 10. Okay? And then we add up the rankings. And so we have 10. Right? And so we hand it back to the people and we say, of these 10, which are most likely to happen? Rank them again. And it's amazing. Look, about these top 2, it's amazing how many times those actually happen, right? So it's an iterative technique, and there are different methods of doing that iterative technique to find out what's best, okay? Then there's the Salesforce composite. So let's now think of Salesforce. They know the customers, they know the industry, they know how much they've sold. So they're a good source of free information of people who know the customers. But there's some issues with that. So let's say, for example, Josh, You're a salesperson. Last year, you sold $1.8 million worth of stuff. Good job. How much are you going to sell next year?
More than 1.9.
Give me a number.
1.9.
1.9 million. That's the man. You know what we're going to do? He's told us he's going to sell 1.9 million. So we make his quota 1.9 million. And then when he sells 1.85 million, you don't get your bonus. So year passes. Last year you sold 1.85 million. Didn't get your bonus, all your bonus. So how much are you going to sell next year?
10,000.
10,000. I may not believe that one, but 1.6. So he puts in 1.6 and he says, you know, next year's really going to be tough. Man, it's going to be tough. So we put his quote as 1.6 million and he gets 1.9 and sweet, he gets extra bonus next year. He sandbags. Sandbagging. You know, Friday, New Orleans is going to get another hurricane. This time it's supposed to be a 4. You remember last time when they got a 5. This is their 3rd hurricane this year that's hitting them. So they are putting sandbags everywhere to handle the excess. So what salespeople often do is they sandbag. So here's how they leave some remaining so that it works out to their benefit. The survey of buyer intentions. So here we ask the customers, how much are you going to buy? Now that sounds like a really good thing to do, right? The customers should know. So for example, when I was at American Tea and Coffee Company, I've been there about 3 weeks, and the salesperson for Ball Glass comes to me. Joe, how many peanut butter jars do you need next year? It's time to order for next year. I didn't know. I've been there 3 weeks. I said, well, how many did I buy last year? And he said, 1.8 million. I said, put me down for 1.8. And then he says, you know, if you buy 2 million, you get a 2% discount. Oh, well, put me down for 2 million. You know, if you order 2 million, you have to accept and take 2 million. Well, I didn't need 200,000 extra peanut butter jars in my warehouse when it comes to counting inventory right at the end of the year. So I said, well, can't we just give you an approximate and then buy and order some more later? And he said, well, let me explain how this works. So what we do is when we run your peanut butter jars, we shut down the plant. And then we take your molds and we put your molds for peanut butter jars in because they're different than everybody else's jars. And then after it comes out of the blow molder, then these steel pinchers grab the jar and they move them over here. And then another set of pinchers move them around like this. And then another set of pinchers grabs them and water's sprayed in them. Another set of pinchers grab them and they flip them upside down for the water to dry out. Another set of pinchers grabs them and they run them upside down and they blow air through them to dry them. And then at the end of the line, they flip them back over and put them in a box. And there are like 3,000 pinchers that touch those jars. Now, you know what happens if those pinchers are too tight? Cracks and breaks the jar, and they have to shut down the line because they can't allow glass down below because it would fall into the new glasses, and we can't have people getting peanut butter with glass in it, right? So, and if it's too loose, the jar wiggles and it breaks. So those pinchers have to be set exactly right. So they close down the plant, and it takes 3 days to set up for my peanut butter run, my jars. And then when they got it done, they turned the plant on, and it takes 2 hours to make my 1.8 million peanut butter jars. And he said, now, if you come back later and you say, we need 200,000 more jars, we have to shut the plant down, put your molds in and adjust all the pinchers back to fit your, and then run it. And he says, I'll tell you, it almost costs the same amount to get 200,000 as it does to get 1.8 million. Because it's the time it takes up in a plant when they could be running jars, and they charge for the time. So I didn't know how many I need, and I knew how many I needed next month. In fact, I could have forecast 2 months out. But what if we got COVID going on. Think of all the people who are doing this around the country, right? How many are you going to sell next year? Well, it depends on whether they come up with a vaccine or not, right? And it depends on who's elected president and whether we have a double dip recession. I don't know how many I'm going to sell next July, right? So forecasting can be really tough, okay? So if you look at this, and I've already talked through all this, but jury executive opinion, it's quick, it's inexpensive. If you get the wrong people, you're in trouble, right? They give you the wrong suggestions, the wrong advice, you're gonna blow it. The Delphi technique. So generally, they're very accurate at predicting long-term events, but it takes a long time, and you're paying these people. Salesforce Composite, they have expert customer knowledge on the product, on the competitors, on their customers, quick, inexpensive, but they may give you a low estimate because they don't want to get hurt by this. Survey of buyer opinions can be really good because the customers know their business, but they generally know what's going to happen short term, not the long term. So then we look at quantitative. Here's where we put our stats in there. Quantitative forecasting techniques. So market test. Let's take the product to Columbus, Ohio, and let's see how many people buy it. So one time when I was at CenturyLink, we developed this idea, and so we came up with a product that blocked telemarketers, all of them, okay? Now this was before everybody was using data for their cell phones. So at that time, nowadays, they get to you because they spoof another telephone number. They pick a local telephone number, make it caller ID, but they hadn't figured that out back then. So what they did was when they called you, they took away the caller ID, okay? So what we programmed the switch to where if it didn't get caller ID, it sent the call to a message. And the message says, this phone does not accept telemarketer calls. If you're not a telemarketer, press 1 and your call will be completed. Well, of course, the machines that run the telemarketing thing, they can't press 1. So we would block every telephone. And I think that is a great product, right? So our plan was our 6 steps of the product development process. We test marketed. So we came up with some literature and we offered it for sale to every single home in Wisconsin. And we sold 5. 5. This was a great idea. I mean, doesn't that sound like a good product? We sold 5. So we figured we did the literature badly. Let's come up with some more literature and have another. So we sent out literature again to every home in Wisconsin, and we sold none. So we killed the product, right? Great product, killed it. But we tested it. Then there's trend analysis. So I went to American Tea and Coffee Company, and so I mentioned setups for ball glass. We had setups in our peanut butter factory. In fact, we averaged 6 setups a day. Now, a setup could be something from changing the label, which shuts the plant down for about, the line down for about 5 minutes, to changing the size of the peanut butter and the brand. So we could go from 16 ounce to 32 ounce, and when you shut the plant down, you change the amount of peanut butter that comes out of the filler, you change the tracks to hold the size of the 32 ounce, you have to change the cappers. You have to take all the caps out of the capper and put new caps in the capper to screw the caps on. You change, it takes 3 hours to make that kind of major change. We had 6 of those a day. And I thought, this is nonsense. We are wasting so much time. So what we needed to do is have longer runs of stuff. So I took over the scheduling. And Ernie, the plant manager, peanut butter manager, was thrilled that I was going to do it instead of him doing it. So what would happen was Kroger would call us and they'd order 1,200 cases of 16 ounce. And Judy would write it on a piece of paper like this. And she'd put it in a notebook. At the end of the week, Ernie would come and he'd look at the orders through the week, and then he would schedule the peanut butter setups, right? And what would happen is a truck would pull in and they'd say, hey, where's our 24 ounce peanut butter? And I'd go, I didn't know where that was coming. And so he stops the plant, gives the driver of the truck a bunch of donuts and some free coffee, and makes the peanut butter and then ships it out and then goes back to what he was doing. So what I did is what you would have done. I took all the books and I took all the orders for the last 3 years and I put them in a spreadsheet. And then I forecasted how many we'd be selling. So Ernie comes to me the next day, after I scheduled the first one, he says, what are you doing making 16,000 cases of Big Cheese? I looked at the orders and you have orders for 8,000. I said, yeah, but next week Kroger's going to give us an order for 1,200 cases. He said, how do you know that? I said, they've done it every 2 weeks for the last 3 years. They have? Yes. Oh, he didn't look. Got a forecast. So I take over the mustard line, right? And so I took over, it was right around April. And you know what happens, so mustard sales are going on like this. And you know what happens at the end of May. What happens at the end of May? May 30th. Every May 30th. Memorial Day, right? You have cookouts. Sales drop a little. And then you have the 4th of lots of peanut butter, mustard sales. Goes down. And then in August we have Labor Day. All right, Labor Day, or I guess that's September. Now it's September. Right. Okay, so we have, and then peanut butter sales or mustard sales go down, 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 down. And I do not know why to this day, but in January, mustard sales go up to where it's like it's July 4th. I don't know why. I don't know if everybody's just run out of mustard, so they go buy another one, or if there's some holiday dish that uses mustard. I know Vienna sausages do. You know those little sausages with the sauce and all? They use mustard in that sauce. I don't know. My mom for January 1st, you have to have ham and yams, and anybody mom do that? Had to. It was good luck. And I don't know if there's mustard that, somebody's got mustard fetish that goes on January 1. But every January 1, big sales. So I am three shifts, 2 shifts. one shift, half a shift, because we're not selling much mustard in November. But if I don't know January 1 coming, I will run out of mustard, won't be able to sell it, right? So I go back past December to mid-November, and I'm making extra mustard like mad, right? So that I can meet that. And then sales drop, and then they gradually go up until May comes, right? So I need to understand what the trends are, what's going on, right? So then there's modified trend analysis. So for example, how many are we going to sell next week? Well, let's just take a mean. What do we, on average, what do we sell, right? Well, then there's what's called a moving average. If you take operations management, you get all this stuff in excruciating detail, which from my point of view is one of the best classes anybody could take. Dr. Whitehead is just tremendous. So anyway, on this one they do, let's add up what's happened in the past 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, and then divide by the number of weeks. So we have a moving average. So it's always the last 3 weeks, okay? Then you guys did, who's taken Business 230? Okay, so you guys have done regression analysis, the rest of you will. And then there's exponential smoothing. It says we always sell at least this much, and then depending on what something else, we sell more or less. Okay, so let me give you an example. Okay. So here are sales. Okay, so here is a mean, right? Simple mean, add up and divide. So if we have 1 week's worth of data, how many do we forecast for next week? 100 divided by 1 is 100. So then the next week, you got 100 and 105. So we add those up, divide by 2, we get 102.5. Then the next time we have 100, 105, 103. We add them all up, divide by 3, and we get 104. Then, you follow me? So we just, as many as we have, we add them up and divide by the number of weeks. Okay? So if we add all those up, here's the number. So here's how far off I missed it. So we forecast 100, had 105, missed it by 5. Forecast 102.5 was 103, we missed it by half. Here we forecast 102.67, it was 110, we missed it by 7. You follow me? So then I add up the total of how much our misses were, and we missed by 66 units. Everybody follow that? Now let's do a moving average. So here with a moving average, I have to have 3 weeks worth of data. So I take the first 3 weeks worth of data, and then I divide by 3, and I get 102.67. Then I take 3 weeks worth of data, this week, and this week. I add them up, I divide by 3, and I get 106. Then I take the next 3 weeks, 103, 110, 108, and I divide, I get 107. Then I take the next 3 weeks, 110, 108, 115, divide by 3. Notice I'm always taking 3 weeks, and I'm always dividing by 3, but I take the last 3 weeks. Okay, so here, how much did I miss it by? First week, I missed it by 7. Second week, I missed it by 2. So I forecast 106, got 100, I had 108. Right? So if I total up all these misses, I only missed it by 36. So this is a better forecasting method than this is for this data set. Now, a different data set, this might be better than this. You follow me? So let's look at, take it a little deeper. Let's add in exponential smoothing regression. So exponential smoothing, I'm going to at least sell 80, and then I'm going to sell more based on some factor, right? So here, I missed it by 3 the first week, 5 the second week, 5 third week, 5, 11, 3, 6, 2. My total misses were 40 units. So, and then here's the regression analysis, the smooth line, and my variance from actual 54. So with this data set, I tried 4 different methods of forecasting, and this one was my best, the moving average. Now, when I went to CenturyLink, I did this for all 3,000 of the products that I purchased. All right, I got in, put them in a spreadsheet, and then I ran regression and exponential smoothing and different moving averages and mean. And for each different item, we had a different success rate. So I'd use a different technique. And I'll tell you, the accuracy of the forecast went up tremendously, but there were still misses, right? So the market test is very realistic, but it lets the competitors know I'm coming out with a new product. Trend analysis is quick and inexpensive, but it assumes the future is just like the past. And exponential smoothing and trend and moving averages and things like that have the same benefit of the trend analysis, but we put emphasis on the most recent data. So if I'm having a short-term trend, I'm gonna take that into account. So let me give you some examples from the real world. Oops, here. Share. So here is my CenturyLink budget for 2003, okay? So here's how much we made 2002. So what's the forecast for 2003, right? So we lined it all up. And so we took several categories that the CEO wanted to see, and we looked at those. And so this was just looking at $70 million of our $4 billion budget, $4 billion revenue. But I thought I'd highlight a couple things to you. So he looks at this, and Glenn looks at me and said, I thought you were good. The whole room goes silent. And I'm horrified. And he says, for your information, second line has increased in revenue 16% a year for the last 11 years. Fortunately, I had prepared. Now, what a dumb thing if you only prepare for the numbers that you give and not think through what questions might somebody have. So I said, you're right. It has increased 16% a year for the last 16 years. But now we have DSL. And you guys know second line, you buy a second phone in your house, okay? Now, when we wired the network, we wired it with 2 sets of 2 pair. So there were 4 wires going to every home in the country, because if you said, I want a second phone line, and we had to wire it from the central office, it cost us millions. So instead what we did when we set up the phone network is we gave everyone the capability of having 2 phone lines, everybody in the country. So we had 2 pair going to everybody's, 2 sets of 2 pair going to everybody in the country, right? So if you decided we want a second line, we turn that baby up, we charge you $30 a month, and it only costs us $1 a month to run it. So we make $29 profit. Love second line. So I said, here's what people are doing. They have a second line. They've been putting in second line because of dial-up internet. And what they're doing is they're disconnecting their $30 a month second line, and they're disconnecting their dial-up internet, and they're adding $50 DSL. And so they don't pay any more money, and they get high-speed internet. And Glenn said, hold it. We make $5 a month profit on high-speed internet. We make $29 a month profit on second line. Why would we provide anybody high-speed internet? And I said, well, if we don't, somebody else will. And that's just the way of the world. And we're going to lose profits. And I said, as a matter of fact, yesterday, Bell South announced that they're expecting second line to go down 4%. Boy, wasn't I glad I saw that report. So this 1% is optimistic. We're going to try to get it. Okay. I passed. So let me tell you this one. This was my biggest goof up while I was there. So this is directory assistance. So you guys may not know because the way the world works nowadays. But if you need somebody's phone number, you can dial 411 or you can dial 555-1212 and an operator will come on and you can ask them anyone's telephone number in the United States and they'll tell you what that phone number is. Do you know that? Nowadays, you use whitepages.com or you text a friend and say, hey, what's Bill's phone number, right? But you could dial 411, right? Unless it doesn't work in Europe. In Europe, 411 is 911. And in Europe, 911 is 411. So if you have an emergency. So what happens is if you dial 411, they'll give you somebody's phone. Like if you said, I need Joe Spencer's phone number in Anderson, South Carolina, they give it to you. And then they bill you $3.75 on your phone call for the privilege. Right? So at CenturyLink, we gave people 5 free directory assistance calls. And then we charged you a quarter. So I was like, this is stupid. We'll raise it to $1.25. And we still are $2.50 cheaper than Bell South is for their cell phone service. And so we'll make a boatload of money. So I put in my forecast that we would make $2 million extra dollars. I actually thought we'd generate $8 million extra dollars, but I sandbagged just in case. And good thing I did, because after we did this, set the budget, and we went to work and to get it done, we found out that they had wired the entire, or at least 90% of the CenturyLink network incorrectly. And we were sending our 411 calls to Bell South, and Bell South, instead of our own 411 service, and Bell South was charging us $3.75 for every one of those calls, and we were giving them free to our customers. It took me 9 months to get the guys in operations. I had, fortunately, in a previous job, I had done, here's how to wire the network. And so I had to teach them how to do it and then get them to do it, right? And then we had to file the tariffs to change the prices. And the guys in the legal regulatory said, well, we're not sure we want to do that. Somebody might get mad and complain. So I had to get them to do it. So I had committed $2 million. So every month in the monthly summary business meeting with Karen, Karen said, it doesn't look like we've had any more revenue and directory assistance. I had already told her what the problems were and that we were working on them. But she didn't care about that. It was a chance to kick me in the butt and humiliate me and get me going. Right? And every month she's asking, now, why is it so important to her? So we committed to get $2 million of extra revenue. What do you think the company did with that extra $2 million? We hired people. Say that? So what happens if you spend $2 million more in expense on employees and you don't get revenue to pay for it? Profits drop $2 million. Now, as far as I was concerned, our company came up with $500 million in profits a quarter. It's no big deal. But Karen looked at it and says, no, this impacts earnings by the tune of $2 million. And that means that the stock price drops 1/4 of a point. And we have a fiduciary responsibility to our employees. Now, if we were a small company and suddenly we had $2 million expense without the revenue to incorporate, what happens to you? You go bankrupt. So fortunately, we're a big company, didn't make that big of a deal. But every month, Karen was after me, right? So eventually, by the end of the year, we got an extra $1 million. And the next year, we probably would have gotten $8 million. We probably got an extra $8 million on top of that. But I was $1 million shy, right? That's 10 extra employees who hadn't been paid for. So budgeting is really important. So anyway, you can see things like, here's our long distance revenue, which was going to be 164 million. We promised we were going to get $22 million extra in revenue. So let me stop this share and let me show you. So you do the revenue budget, and of course, off the revenue budget, we decide, operations side, oh, if you're going to do that much money, we need this many more machines. And customer service says, we need to hire this many more employees. Okay? So then, this one. Then you've got your employee budget. So I had 250 employees who reported to me. So this is the budget for them without salaries, not including salaries, okay? So for example, I had a building in Kalispell, Montana. It was $1,600. We pay people's dues to the American Marketing Association, which reminds me, if you're a marketing major, getting a student membership for $25 a year to the American Marketing Association would look good on your resume. If you're a management student, the American Management Association would look good on your resume. If you're an accountant, the American Accountancy Association, to be one step ahead. Because so when somebody looks at you, they say, hey, look, this person had enough sense to get involved in the industry before they graduated. Just a thought. So if I'm going to send people to travel, I've got to have money for airplanes. I've got to have money for lodging. I've got to have, I'm gonna need to buy a new chair for somebody. Here, let me go over here. Here's my total budget. This is my marketing consolidated. So I got $70,000 in postage. I'm gonna hire some consultants. I need $780,000 to do that. You gotta like this one. This is my miscellaneous budget. How would you like to have $500,000 a year spent on anything that you want to, totally unplanned? Is that cool? So for example, I thought we need to get everybody to do something. So we rented the bowling alley and took all 250 people to the bowling alley and had a party. So we fed them and we bowled. We took the entire day and just had fun. Yeah, why not? Right? So moving expense. I don't know what happened to this. Moving expense, $279,000. I'm going to hire people. They don't live in Louisiana. I got to move them. If I don't budget the moving expense, they ain't coming. Right? So you see this one right here, this S001937X. That's your budget. So if you worked for me and you were a second level manager, you had people reporting to you. You had to provide a budget. So what mine is this marketing consolidated where I take your budget and everybody else's budget and I add them all together and then I add some other stuff that I'm going to need. So if you are going to do any traveling, if you or your people are going to travel, you got to budget it or you ain't going anywhere. So let's say you wanted to take your group out to dinner if you don't budget some miscellaneous expense, you guys are not going out to dinner to celebrate Christmas. You're not going to go out and have a good time just because you had success in this area of your project. You got no money if you don't budget it. So what does that tell you? You go to work, and some of you, as soon as you graduate, that July, you'll have to do one of these. Now, if you go in and you're working for somebody and you don't have anybody reporting to you, you won't do one. But as soon as you get promoted, you're doing one of these. So I go to Bell South. I have no money to spend to develop my product, to do any advertising. I got nothing. And this guy who was next to me, he had all kinds of money. And so I go for the first year, and it comes up in April. I said, hey, Sean, how do you have all this money? Oh, well, I filled out a budget request. Oh, well, I need to do a budget request. Can you give me the form? And he said, oh, sure, I'll be glad to. They're due tomorrow. Oh, no. So I got the form for it. Unfortunately, it was early in the morning, but I worked late that night. I came up with a budget, and I asked for $10 million. I figured if I ask for $10 million, maybe I'll get two. I asked for $10 million, right? Now, actually, I asked for 10.2 million. Never asked for 10 million. Never end in a round number. So you never tell anybody we're going to make $2 million or we're going to make $4 million because they think you're guessing. But if you say we're going to make $2.6 million or we're going to make $1.993 million, they believe you've done your homework and you've calculated out. You're really accurate, and they'll give it to you. So I think it was 10.6 million that I asked for. The next week I go in, they pull me into a meeting to justify my request. Of course, they notified me the hour before. Walk in there, justified my request, and the next week I got it all. So the next year I had $10.6 million spent. Was that a different year than the year before? Sweet. Budgeting. It's really important. So what all are we going to spend money on? This guy's cutting his. All right, so let me stop that share and show you one more. So we've got money. Now that's not salaries. That's just money to operate. That's to get a pen, to use a pen. All right, then we have, I had to budget money to market. Right? So here, for example, this is wireline. So this includes things like we want people to buy caller ID, we want people to buy phone mail, we want people to buy this extra package of stuff that we have. So we had to market to them. So you notice we've got advertising budget, we've got printing expense and telemarketing. And so this one manager of mine is going to spend 5.696, not 5.5, 5.696. This guy knows what he's doing, right? So he got a budget of 5.696 million to spend, right, on marketing. And within 3 or 4 years, you may be doing this. So this was my budget for 2002. Think how many man hours it went in to do this. This is just for marketing. Operations did one, accounting did one, finance department did one, HR did one. Everybody, now I had to do this budget, the other guys don't have to do. But I didn't have to do a capital request budget for how many switches we were going to put in. The operations guys did. Budgeting, think how many hours. We actually put this document, this package together. We finished at 2 o'clock in the morning. We had everybody there because we had to give 250 of these to the people who were in the meeting the next day. All right, 2 o'clock in the morning is one of the very few days I think twice I had to have everybody stay late like that. Of course, I fed them and gave them a day off. You know, you reward people for doing good things and going above the call, right? So this is really important stuff. You guys have a great day. That was